Alright, so in this video I'm going to show you some differences in the interface for Microsurvey 2016 as opposed to 2010. One main difference is the addition of the properties panel, which is actually in most CAD packages made in the last 10 years or so. So to bring that up, you can type in properties in your command bar. You can see it pops up here. Get rid of it and just enter properties in again. It'll pop back up. Another way to do it is to select an object and then right click and then hit properties in your right click menu. So here it is. This shows all the parameters of an object that you have selected. So if I hit escape and I end my selection, it just has some generic stuff about the actual drawing right here. And you can see if I select a line, it'll bring up information about it here, the start, the end, the length. Keep in mind this length is in 3D as well. If you would like to see it in 2D, you have to make sure your grips are off. And you can do that by typing in grips, and you can see down here you just have to say off if or on if you want to turn that on or off. I always work with them off just so I can bring up this shortcut menu here. So just like 2010, you double click an object, this window should look familiar. So it shows you all the stuff about the line, but most importantly, that'll show you horizontal distance. Once again, this will show you its 3D distance. So with this properties panel, you can actually leave it on all the time. I personally just leave it on my secondary monitor, just kind of on the side. Or you can snap it to the sides of your workspace here if it wants to behave. There we go. So just make sure you're grabbing it by the side over here and then bringing it over. So you can just leave that there if you prefer. Otherwise, you can just bring it up only when you need it. So like I said, it'll show everything about the selection that you have. So if I select all these objects here, you'll see it says all, and then if I hit that list, it'll give me a drop down of everything there. So this is important when flattening because 2016 doesn't have the command flatten. I know, I was frustrated too. I find it annoying, but once you get used to it, you can get the same thing done relatively quickly here as well. So if I click line, it'll show you all the information about all the lines, but most importantly, you'll see that start Z and end Z vary here. So that means that some of these lines are on different planes currently. And you can also just hit escape to get rid of the selection set there as well. So if you have some selected, hit escape, it'll just go back to no selection. So if you select everything and you want to flatten all these objects, and that's something you'll normally want to do because you can't perform lots of operations like fillet or trim or extend when things aren't on the same 3D plane, so they'll be on a different elevation. So to do that, all I have to do is it's only going to be lines that you're worried about. Polylines and everything, that's a little more advanced and you probably won't have to deal with that. So go to line, and to flatten everything, you just go to the Z value here, start Z, type 0, and then end Z here, type 0, boom. Delta is Z is 0, so that means they're all on the same plane now. One case where that can be different is when you have an arc, which we will in lots of cases here. You'll see this value here, center Z, that's the one you want at 0 if you're going to show this or have this available to do any fillet type operations and put it on the same 2D plane as everything else. So just for interest's sake here, I'll put this at 23 or something. So you can see here, once again, I select all the objects. Now that I actually do have an arc in here, I can select the arc. You can see this object here says 23. I'm going to type 0 for center Z. Boom. Now all your lines and your arcs should all be on the same plane. You should be able to perform all the operations that you need to. And if you're doing things in the coordinate editor, like zeroing some of these points, that behaves exactly the same as it does in Microsurvey 2010. So you can zero things here using this selection box, set it all to 0, however you used to get to that same point. It's just for any drawn line object, you'll have to use the properties panel. So select all, pick line, make sure these two are 0, start Z, end Z, and also pick arc, make sure that the center Z value is 0, and that's all it takes. Another difference is the layer manager in 2016. So if you just hit the button up here for explore layers, Looks very similar to the way it does in 2010, but one major advantage is you can use the layer manager while you're active in the drawing. So I can draw a line while this is on, and then I can turn a layer on or off over here, freeze or thaw it, any number of things. As opposed to 2010, where once you actually have the, you're doing a command, and you open up your layer manager. Once you have this open, you can't select anything in this drawing space over here, which is actually really frustrating. And additionally, you can't multi-select different layers to freeze and thaw. So it'll only do the one that you have selected. You can see what's happening there. I select a bunch of them, and I go on, off. It just switches the one that I've selected. So in 2016, if there's a whole group of layers that you want to turn on and off, I can just do shift select and then turn it off, turn it on, or I could do a control select, so that's holding control, selecting all the layers you're worried about, turning that off and on. So that's another really big advantage for this version of microsurvey.